a continent clutching over 40% of the world's gold, yet suffocating in destitution. Burkina Faso, a small West African nation, produces over 70 tons of gold annually, ranking among Africa's top producers. But the cruel paradox persists. Its people cannot afford medicine. Children die of starvation. Farmers lose their fields, and hospitals lack power. Why do the richest lands cradle the poorest lives? From the ashes of poverty and injustice rises a name shaking the global stage: Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's young president. By rejecting aid, expelling French troops, tearing up military pacts, and cutting Western financial ties, he has sparked a fire. To some, it's reckless. To Burkinabé, it's their first true cry for independence after decades of manipulation. Why does Traoré dare what others wouldn't? And why does the West fear an Africa forging its own path? Burkina Faso's colonial legacy and Western exploitation. Burkina Faso's history is a saga of plundered dreams. Once Upper Volta, it was reborn as land of upright people under Thomas Sankara, the anti-imperialist visionary of the 1980s. But his 1987 assassination, orchestrated with Western complicity, buried that vision. For 27 years, Blaise Compaoré ruled with France's tacit blessing, opening Burkina Faso's gold fields, over 90% of its wealth, to foreign firms: Canadian, British, Australian, French. State industries were privatized, leaving citizens destitute. Western media framed Compaoré as a stabilizer, masking the looting. France's Operation Barkhane, stationed in Burkina Faso, guarded mining routes while jihadist attacks surged, fueled by withheld intelligence and underfunded missions. Since 1960, 9 successful coups, more than any African nation, mark this turmoil. From Colonel Sangoulé Lamizana's 1966 takeover to Compaoré's betrayal of Sankara, scholars call it a semi-sovereign state, independent in name. But a puppet of Western levers, its suffering silenced to protect foreign profits. Who is Ibrahim Traoré, the soldier who refused to stay silent? Born in 1988, a year after Sankara's murder, Ibrahim Traoré grew up under Compaoré's shadow. Unlike peers who fled or fell silent, he chose to serve. Trained at the University of Ouagadougou and forged as an artillery officer, Traoré fought in the Sahel's ravaged North Laroum, Yatenga, Soum, where terrorists tore through villages and state authority collapsed. There, he saw the war on terror as a sham, a cover for neo-colonial exploitation. French troops prioritized mining corridors over civilian lives. Billions in aid failed to halt territorial losses. Intelligence was delayed or withheld. These betrayals shaped Traoré, not just military doctrine. A young officer, he refused to accept broken promises, questioning why his people suffered while foreign powers profited. His resolve, rooted in Burkinabé patriotism and Sankara's legacy, set him apart as a soldier who dared to speak. The coup that defied a system, not just a man. In September 2022, Traoré, a 35-year-old unknown, marched on Ouagadougou, toppling Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba. But this was no ordinary coup. Damiba, who ousted President Roch Kabore in January 2022 for failing against jihadists, clung to French ties. Troops stayed. Secret deals persisted, and misery deepened. Traoré called his coup a rectification, not just of Damiba, but of decades of foreign domination. With no political experience or elite backing, he leaned on Burkinabé pride and Sankara's spirit. "No sacrifice is too great to free our nation," he declared. "Peace is our mission, the people our guide." This was a revolt against a system, a bold stand against Western control that had bled Burkina Faso dry. From Compaoré's 27-year reign to Damiba's brief, complicit rule, Traoré vowed to reclaim his nation's destiny, breaking the chains, expelling France, ending Western influence. Traoré's reforms struck like lightning. Within 4 months, he expelled French forces, ending Operation Sabre near Ouagadougou's airport. He voided a 1961 military pact allowing French intervention, a colonial relic common in Francophone Africa. The empire has been ousted. Supporters roared. He suspended French media Radio France Internationale, France 24, accusing them of disinformation and destabilization. French NGOs, suspected of espionage under AIDS guise, were banned. Burkina Faso's 70-ton annual gold output, among Africa's largest, sees over 90% siphoned by foreign firms. Traoré launched audits, scrutinizing Compaoré and Cabaret-era contracts, condemning the gold drain that impoverishes his people while enriching European markets, rejecting IMF and Western financial ties. He echoed Sankara's call for self-reliance, urging youth to rise with tools, ingenuity, and hope. Breaking free from decades of neo-colonial chains, media wars, and global reactions. Why the West fears him. The West's response reveals its dread. Media branded Traoré a junta leader, Putin's pawn, a militant threat, ignoring the collapse of trust in their backed regimes. When Human Rights Watch alleged Burkinabé troop massacres in 2024, Traoré suspended outlets like the BBC, Voice of America, and Human Rights Watch itself, alongside The Guardian, Le Monde, TV5 Monde, and Deutsche Welle for an orchestrated campaign to discredit the military. Websites were blocked, signaling zero tolerance for biased narratives. Think tanks Atlantic Council, Brookings warn of autocracy, yet their funding from Western defense contractors and Sahel-staked governments raises bias concerns. The West fears Traoré's exposure of their resource theft and media manipulation. Terrified his example will inspire other African nations. His alliance of Sahel states AES with Mali and Niger threatens their grip. If Traoré is a liberator, he gains sympathy. If a rogue, he invites sanctions or worse. This media war betrays their panic. A nation awakens volunteers, patriotism, and the rise of the Sahel Alliance. Traoré's vision has ignited a nation. Over 50,000 civilians joined the volunteers for the defense of the homeland VDP, verified by the Ministry of Territorial Administration, ready to defend their land. Surveys show strong support for the AES, a pact with Mali and Niger for mutual defense and foreign military expulsion, defying ECOWAS suspensions meant to enforce democratic order. Citizens see Traoré as a shield against foreign deceit and internal chaos. In December 2023, unconfirmed coup rumors swirled, with U.S. satellite activity noted over Ouagadougou. The elite presidential guard swelled from 800 to 2,500 in 6 months. A senior officer, speaking anonymously, warned, "We're not blind. We recall Sankara's end. When U.S. General Michael Langley accused Traoré of diverting gold, an audit refuted it as imperial lies. This unity, citizens and soldiers, proves a nation rising, not with weapons, but with resolve to forge its future." What happens when a young leader refuses aid, defies headlines, and acts without permission? You get Ibrahim Traoré and a new Africa, one that demands sovereignty, not salvation. His Burkina Faso, like Sankara's before, dares to envision a self-reliant continent. But if the West rejects an autonomous Africa, is Africa ready to rise, to dream, to fight, to rewrite its story before Traore. Before Sankara, a dreamer spoke of a United States of Africa. The question lingers, can the West tolerate an Africa that thinks, governs, and defines itself? Stay curious for more. Keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.